World retention has been an increasingly sought-after feeling to capture in video games. The industry has been shifting to accommodate this level of immersion from as many angles as possible. The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered will act as the next step in cementing this feeling.
Yes, the remaster that is borderline impossible to differentiate from the original game is going to cement the feeling of world retention. That's how you're starting this? That's how we're kicking it off? How long did it take you to come up with that? Like, you see Last of Us 2 Remastered get revealed, you double check to make sure it's actually legit and not a meme like most of us probably did, and then you sit in front of the mirror like, alright, how can I defend this? World retention, perfect.
Naughty Dog was one of the earliest to this strategy by way of multiplayer.
God, that did not age well.
A studio that was beginning to be renowned for their narrative-driven experiences alone were perceived to be an unlikely success story in the online space. Single-player games that are film-like were typically meant to service for 10 hours or less in most cases.
Couldn't be modern Naughty Dog.
An additional multiplayer experience would present to many as being tacked on even if what was created was high-end. It was often believed that because a studio like Naughty Dog was so ahead in its chosen genre that being a contender in a far different space was unrealistic.
Now, in this guy's defense, he made this video like a week or two before Last of Us Factions was officially canceled, but like, God, still. This is a fucking rough way to open a video trying to defend Last of Us 2 Remastered. And that ultimately is what this video is for. I mean, the video is called Last of Us Part 2 Remastered is about connection. So, weird start.
Despite this, many found themselves becoming invested in these franchises and their characters by way of that entry point.
Okay, I know you're trying to make the argument that connection to universes can come from multiplayer, but like, I don't think anyone got invested with the characters of Naughty Dog games because of their multiplayer. Like, let's be real. You didn't get invested in Joel and Ellie or Nathan Drake because you played the fucking multiplayer. Like, you've been talking for less than a minute, and the reaches you're throwing out here are insane. Like, you didn't have to try and go up to bat for Last of Us 2 Remastered. You chose to do this. No one made you do this. If you're reaching this hard immediately out of the gate, maybe you just shouldn't have done this.
Multiplayer allowed people a chance to open a door they were unfamiliar with.
This dude really cut to Nathan Drake opening a door when he said open the door. Like, you were way too proud of that.
The narrative worlds of The Last of Us and Uncharted were on the other side. It was only a matter of time before the stories of Joel, Ellie, and Nathan Drake became the center of the enjoyment.
Good thing those are the only characters Naughty Dog has ever made, right? Fucking good thing Naughty Dog will never focus on anyone else ever again, right?
These routes are able to create a higher level of investment in the greater worlds of these games. While maybe an unintentional result at the time, having these alternate doors into Uncharted and The Last of Us kept relevance high at all times. You didn't always have to replay narratives or await the next one. Multiplayer offered this kind of connection back into the world when you felt you needed it.
Got a reminder, this video is called Last of Us Part 2 Remastered is about connection. This is a video meant to defend Last of Us 2 Remastered. Painful irony of Last of Us Online aside, this is just a very strange way to spend the first minute and a half of your video if the ultimate goal is to defend Last of Us 2 Remastered.
The process of this has since become very intentional. There are just now far more doors to open that all inevitably reach the center. It's vastly misdirected the conversation surrounding remakes and remasters of The Last of Us, and it will continue to do so.
I mean, Naughty Dog could have just offered some free updates and compatibility patches like a studio run by people who actually give a shit, and then the conversation could have been about their new creations, but, you know, I guess that's too much to ask of them.
There is an audience that is under the impression that Naughty Dog is going to only be producing The Last of Us from now on.
How dare people come to that conclusion based on literally all the evidence that Naughty Dog has provided them?
Increased development length in AAA has heavily contributed to feeling like the IP has been around forever.
I mean, speak for yourself, but I think the frustration that a lot of people have with the number of Last of Us remakes and re-releases is because it doesn't feel like the IP has been around forever. Last of Us 1 came out in 2013, that's barely 10 years ago. And since then, there has been one official sequel, and now 3 re-releases. You say that, oh, it feels like the franchise has been around forever, but like that's literally the opposite of why people are annoyed at Naughty Dog, because it doesn't feel like the franchise has been around forever. Also, maybe development of modern games wouldn't take so long if resources weren't constantly being moved to pointless re-releases.
Uncharted 1 through 4 and Lost Legacy happened in 10 years. Naughty Dog as a studio has never been one to continue a story just for the sake of it.
Lol.
The right idea has always had to exist before going down such a long path. There have only been 2 Last of Us games. It's likely one more will follow in addition to the multiplayer project.
Lol.
The outline for what would be a third part was conceptualized before the HBO show even began filming. There is one more very important story to be told with Ellie should they choose to do it. It's easy to find excitement in a new IP from Naughty Dog. Before The Last of Us was officially announced, their entire audience was enamored with Nathan Drake.
Yes, and before that, their audience was enamored with Jak and Daxter, and before that, it was Crash Bandicoot. Naughty Dog used to do a lot of different things. Again, this is why the decade-long hyper-focus on Last of Us, with only 2 actual games in the series, annoys people so much. Again, this is all being said in an effort to defend Last of Us 2 Remastered. I genuinely cannot believe this. Naughty Dog fanboys are a different breed.
The first time Joel and Ellie were shown, there was as much nervousness as there was excitement. It felt worrying that the studio was going to do an infection-based story in a sea of them.
I mean, sure, I'm not sure what that has to do with now, but go on.
In exchange for that risk, the industry gained some of the most beloved characters in the medium. So beloved that it caused chaos when they were put through their paces in a world that never promised anything but that.
Yes, that's why people were frustrated at Last of Us 2. That's why. Because they were put through their pain. Oh boy, I love this. I love this. How many years has it been now? 3.5 since Last of Us 2 came out, and we're still completely missing the point on people's frustration towards the story. People were not frustrated with Last of Us 2's story because the characters suffered. They were frustrated because the messaging was garbage, the conflict was poorly written, the internal conflict was incredibly poorly written, and in a lot of cases, the characterization that people loved so much in the first game was completely ruined. Can we stop with this idea that Last of Us 2 was criticized because it made the characters suffer and they were never promised not to suffer? It's like, we knew that. We knew people, like, we knew characters were going to suffer. That's why people liked the Last of Us universe, because it was very real, it was very grounded, and the suffering felt genuine. The suffering felt very human. It made the story more impactful. And then all of that was thrown out in part 2, so Neil Druckmann could tell some weird, like, pseudo-emotional revenge but not revenge story. Last of Us 2 is poorly written. Just fucking get over it. We can argue about whether or not you're okay with that. We can argue about whether or not, you think the criticism is justified. But if we're talking about, like, the objective storytelling, the objective, like, characterization, the objective portrayal of the things that are attempting to be portrayed, it is bad. It's pretty, it looks nice, it plays nice, it sounds nice, but the writing is bad. Again, we can argue about whether or not that's forgivable, because in a lot of games and a lot of movies, I think bad writing is forgivable because of other aspects. But the fact that we're 3.5 years after the launch of Last of Us 2 and you're still not understanding why people were upset, oh my god.
The Last of Us 2 Remastered has many angles of utility, but none more important than world retention.
And easy money off of people like you.
The characters you play over the course of a narrative are the ones you will find yourself most attached to.
Yeah, that's how video game narratives work.
Not just due to the player agency that the medium allows for, but more from the perspective of having your eyes on them and their reactions to the world at all times.
God, this is what I mean. You just said player agency in a positive light in reference to Last of Us 2. That literally was one of the biggest criticisms of the game, the lack of player agency. Again, we can argue over whether or not you need player agency in Last of Us 2, We can argue over whether or not player agency would have made the game better if you had more of it. But The Last of Us 2, by design, does not give the player basically any agency over the story. I'm not convinced you actually know what the words you're using mean.
There is a completely separate part of the player-to-character relationship that is built on sight alone. It is much harder to build this same level of attachment to the played-as character in first person.
Why the fuck did you flash Devil May Cry on screen? Like, kudos, fucking love Devil May Cry, but the fuck was the point of that?
You often hear that emotional attachment runs far deeper in the supporting characters you see on screen during first-person stories that are renowned for their writing.
Wolfenstein New Order. Just the Wolfenstein New Order. If you want an example of a first-person game that has incredible writing and makes you sympathize with the person that you're playing in first-person perspective, it's Wolfenstein New Order. Again, why did you flash Devil May Cry?
In most other cases, the world does the heavy lifting. Your entire ability to relate to Abby on any level in Part 2 is due to the fact you spend significant time in control of her.
If you played as Abby from a first-person perspective, none of this would change. Like, what? This is such a filler video.
In third person. If they managed to win you over, by the time the final confrontation took place, you were more conflicted than angry. Perspective was used to the absolute fullest.
What? What?
The Part 2 remaster introduces no return mode, much to the effect of what they have done previously with Uncharted's numerous cooperative modes, except with roguelike elements.
Friendly reminder that God of War Ragnarok put in a giant roguelike mode for free. Again, going back to how different things would be if Naughty Dog was run by people who actually give a shit.
What stands out more is the addition of getting to play as the rest of Part 2's cast.
In a roguelike mode that's not canon. Like, how is this any different than me changing the skin of Doom Guy in Doom Eternal? I play through Doom Eternal, and then I play through Doom Eternal with the classic Doom Guy skin. It's like, oh, it's a completely different character now. It's like, no.
And they're not just skins. Each character gets their own unique set of traits and playstyles.
Yes, thank you, Naughty Dog, for inventing roguelikes. Apparently. Like, this PlayStation guys discover what roguelikes are.
There are a few characters included that do survive Part 2. Much like building attachment to Abby through gameplay, this mode may offer a hint of that via gaining agency of Dina, Lev, and Tommy.
In non-canon roguelike gameplay that's not Again, Naughty Dog fans are a different breed. No other studio gets this much fucking blind praise and blind goodwill. You don't get invested in a character's plight because you played as them in a bonus mode or in a non-story based mode. Like, you don't get emotionally invested in F-Zero because you like playing as Captain Falcon in Super Smash Bros. Like, I'm a melee player, okay? And one of my secondaries is Ganondorf. I fucking love playing as Ganondorf. Melee Ganondorf is fucking rad. But you know who's literally never finished a Zelda game in his life?
This guy.
And every few months I have this delusional fantasy about becoming a Falco main because Melee Falco is fucking awesome. Like, look at this. Look at this. This is objectively fucking awesome. If you don't think this is fucking awesome, I'm gonna fire you from your job. I love Melee Falco, and when I'm watching a tournament, I always root for Falco players. But you know who couldn't tell you a single thing about Falco in the context of his own universe?
This guy.
People don't get emotionally invested in characters that only serve as gameplay vessels, and there's nothing wrong with that. But to act like people are going to grow super invested in these Last of Us characters because of the fucking roguelite bonus mode, because they had a certain set of traits that they liked, like, that's just not how any of this works. Yeah, I'm sure some people will find a character that they like playing as and then have the thought of, oh, I never really paid much attention to this character and now I am. That's kind of cool. But to act like this is going to be some emotional, impactful narrative from new perspectives, like, no. Just no. You're reaching so hard. You're trying so hard to give deeper meaning to things. It's so obnoxious. Like, if this were literally any other franchise or any other developer, you wouldn't be doing this.
Although it cannot be nearly as effective as playing them in an actual narrative, it offers a connection that could not be previously established.
No, if I were to play as one of the side characters in Last of Us in a roguelike mode, I would not be as invested in them as if I was playing through the actual story of a Last of Us game and that character was well presented and well written. Like, what the fuck is your point? This makes no sense.
That's worth exploring. No Return adds a hint of the replayability that was first expected to come by way of factions. Although this is not likely the way this was intended to happen, a mode like this will no doubt be the selling point for many.
I am absolutely begging you to play other video games. Like, I am truly begging you, play other video games.
Getting to jump back into the anxiety-ridden combat of Part 2 in a new way is an easy sell. The guitar in The Last of Us Part 2 carries a great deal of the game's emotional weight.
Are we really going here? We're actually going here now. All right, cool. Tell me about how the in-game guitar in Last of Us 2 is...
You start the game on the guitar and you end the game on the guitar. It exists as Ellie's way to find some faint connection with Joel amidst the chaos. It works to create a stream of emotion anytime it's used in-game.
And thank God there's just a whole bunch of spare strings floating around the post-apocalypse. Am I right? Like, sheesh. Really lucked out on that one.
There are a number of times you are required to use it in order to progress the narrative, but it's also an optional experience from time to time.
Just learn real guitar. Just at this point, just learn real guitar.
Usually placed conveniently after moments of high stress. It can often be relaxing to just sit down and strum aimlessly to collect your thoughts.
Learn real guitar and play other video games.
The free play mode offered in Part 2 Remastered feels like it exists to create a deeper connection with the world rather than Joel.
This is so desperate. This is comically desperate.
You'll find that in games people feel they have a deep connection to, it's often enough to just load back into it and walk around the environment to feel that connection again. The remaster offering the ability to play the guitar in many parts of the world as any character is a feature that's easily overlooked.
Wait, but you just said it's about establishing connection to Joel. So wouldn't playing the guitar at any point as any character weaken that? Wouldn't that lessen the connection to Joel? You can't even keep your own points straight.
There can be a lot of value extracted from simple acts given the right circumstance. The Last of Us has always had a lot to say about the human condition.
Well, the first one did. The second one had one thing to say about the human condition, and that was revenge bad.
The many new features included in the remaster add varying degrees of value depending on how one chooses to interact with a game's world.
Reminder that God of War Ragnarok got a gigantic update completely for free.
The level of immersion you want to feel when playing is fully in your hands.
Reminder that Witcher 3 Remastered was basically just patched into Witcher 3 completely for free.
This new release is just one of many more doors opening that all offer the same thing on the other side. Connection.
God, this is... Wow. I've never seen somebody so passionate about a franchise and like so into a franchise. And there's nothing wrong with that. Totally nothing wrong with loving The Last of Us. Totally nothing wrong with loving a franchise. But I've never seen somebody this into a franchise and this dedicated to loving a franchise, and yet they're still so bad at defending it. This isn't the first time I've responded to Ripadusky. I hope that's how you say your name. Or maybe I don't hope that. I really don't care. But a while back, I made this video, which was also responding to a Ripadusky video. I recommend going and watching that one as well, because it's not like his points have gotten any better. And also, the first video I made responding to him, I actually liked that video. I feel like my points were very good in that one, and I'm proud of that video. Go watch that one. But just, it astounds me that someone can be so dedicated for so long to one franchise, to one IP. You really love it, you really have an emotional connection to an IP, and you are completely incapable of defending it correctly. Because, I mean, I have plenty of franchises that I really, really love, that I would defend, like, to the death, but, like, even I would rip my favorite IP to shreds if there's something that it does wrong, you know? Silent Hill 2 is my favorite game of all time. I can talk for an hour plus about the things in that game that fucking annoy the shit out of me. And also, actually, it's kind of relevant that I bring that up, because Silent Hill 2, my favorite game of all time, is getting a remake. And I'm not excited in the slightest. You can't even pay me to be excited about the Silent Hill 2 remake. I just don't know what it is about Naughty Dog fans and criticism, and why those two things just don't connect. Naughty Dog fans do not criticize Naughty Dog. Like, it seems like the biggest Naughty Dog fans always have so much flowery, they have so much flowery language and so many like big video essays to defend how much they love Naughty Dog. It's so great how much we love Naughty Dog, but you are completely incapable of criticizing them, and you are completely incapable of recognizing valid criticism of them. To the point that, as you guys saw multiple times in this video, you just get it wrong. You just get it wrong. Like, good lord, Last of Us 2 Remastered should have been a free patch. Ugh, toodles.